Hey everybody, yesterday I got the question that I commonly get asked this time of year, and it's how do I jump higher? And my first answer to this would be start worrying about that in June or maybe April and May. Don't start worrying about how to jump higher, 4 weeks before the season starts in basketball. But here we are. So how do you jump higher? This is a common question, and I think there's a lot of fallacy out there, a lot of misconceptions. So I want to address it and talk about it in a few ways, and then I want to also talk about it from the highest level and then all the way down to young kids. How do you jump higher? So number one, how do you jump higher? I would say biomechanics first. So how is the body moving? Is there good joint order, muscle order? Do the movements mirror what their biomechanical advantages and disadvantages currently are at? What can be fixed? So starting to look at technique first. So technique of a jump is the first place I would start. Now, as you know, in sport, there is no singular technique of a jump because the technique of the jump is defined by the environment in which you are currently competing. So that's an important consideration. Biomechanics sometimes can be very stagnant and in a very narrow scope in an unrealistic movement. So you have to keep that in mind. While there is value from looking at the biomechanics and addressing technique, you can't stop there. The next would be physiological. So physiological, when I say affecting your physiology to jump higher, I'm talking about your soft tissue structures, tendon and ligament structures. Obviously, muscles play a key component, especially fast twitch. Muscles play a key component in it, but also the other types too because of the deceleratory components. You never want an athlete to get to a position where they can jump and explode more than they can decelerate or handle or stabilize. That's a very, very important piece of this that I think gets left out. So from a physiological standpoint, when you think about jumping higher, you don't necessarily want to pack on a lot of muscle in a traditional sense. And I'll get into some of that later, but basically your tendon and ligament structures need to increase their density and their elastic fibers and the nature in which that they work with your muscle structures. Now, your muscles do play a key component, mainly from a deceleration and loading standpoint. Your tendon and ligament structures are really what pops off that jump. You never see someone in a basketball game that really knows how to jump just really stress and try to grind it out like the bottom of a squat. Now, does that mean that squat can't help affect jumping ability? No. I'll be the first to tell you that strength levels do have a correlation. It is low. I would say less than 25% with jumping ability. Now, if you have athletes that can't lift 1.5 times their body weight in a bilateral press, leg press doesn't count, then yeah, I think they could have affected tremendously through strength training. Do I think that you can get to the highest level of your jumping ability through strength training? No, most definitely not. From a physiological standpoint, you want to affect the tendon and ligament structures, and I'll get into a little bit of that when we move on to the next thing. But strength is definitely a component. Physiology is a component. Of course, if you're in puberty, you're going to jump higher than when you weren't. So it isn't always the method that you're currently using. The third component of how to jump higher would be affect the neurology. This gets completely left out, and I think a lot of people confuse this with the physiology and the strength training and everything else. The neurological component of jumping higher is it is the most important. The reason is because if you affect the neurology, if you affect the neurological responses and processes, it doesn't matter what environment they're in, they're going to jump higher. I'll give you an example. If you train the tendon and ligament structures to be more reactive, more explosive through different types of implementations and training, it doesn't matter what position your joints are in. It doesn't matter any of the circumstances you're in. It doesn't matter. It's going to work more effectively. That's not the case with your static biomechanics and the basic physiology of strength training. So how do you do this? Because now I don't want to just throw something out there and not tell you how to do this. If you want to jump higher and you want to look through the lens of affecting it from a neurological standpoint, we love to do loads of 0 to 20% as fast as possible. Why? Because your body and your tissues, your neurology is going to adapt to velocity-specific movements, meaning that your body will actually adapt to be more of a mechanism of speed and power. Now, we also like 20 to 40% loads, rapid fire movements. Now, if you don't, we are blessed to have Kaiser equipment, so we can actually measure the actual wattage that you produce, which is a great way to do it. If you have some of the different machines out there that can measure wattage for Olympic lifts and different things, that's an incredible way to do it. if you don't, just do as many reps as you can in less than 5 seconds. Or do 8 reps and time how fast you can do 8 reps. Those are other ways that you can do these things, but you have to calculate load. Now, you have to also be comfortable with the fact that it's not going to feel hard. That doesn't mean it's not effective. But the question asked to me was, how do you jump higher? If you want to know how to jump higher, this is one of the main ways to do it. And I've got proof in this. Last year, we shifted a lot of our training away from plyometrics. I think plyometrics are good, but I think they can mainly be overdone because most athletes don't have the physiology to be able to withstand the demands of plyometrics, and their biomechanics aren't sound, so it can create even more problems. So by going into these underloads and this velocity-based training concept, a piece of that velocity-based training concept, we saw exponential gains in vertical jump and explosive ability. So we had people improve 10 inches, 8 inches. Our average was closer to 6, and in the past had been closer to 4. I mean, that's a huge amount of results. Now, one thing that I think we would have done differently is work more eccentrics on the strength side to be able to prepare people for their new abilities to jump, because there is some responsibility there. But I'm digressing. Basically, you need to affect the biomechanics of the jump, the technique. You need to affect the physiology, meaning your strength and your ability to produce force and interact with gravity. And then you need to affect the neurology, meaning if you don't train fast enough, then you can't just expect it to correlate over. It's not going to correlate over. In fact, I would argue, if you look at some of the people that were the most effective with jumping ability in the history of sports, there was a recent documentary on Dennis Rodman, and he wasn't the highest jumping athlete in the NBA, but he was the fastest. He got off the ground the fastest at the angulation he needed to get the ball. And there's a lot of athletes through the course of the NBA and other sports that you can show, and in wide receivers, you can show they get into the air quicker. And some of that is proprioceptive abilities, reading the situation, perception, action, coupling, a lot of those things. But more so, it's about their ability to react and explode from a neurological standpoint. Their tissues are prepared to react at that level of speed. And I think that you can enhance those qualities through proper training. And I think that is probably more important than measuring a vertical jump. But at this day and age, our world is still hung up on vertical jump, so we need to affect it because that gets our kids opportunities. And quite honestly, it should be going up as their training age improves and their athleticism improves as well. So again, I'm going to keep doing more and more of these, but if you have any questions for topics, just let me know. I mean, today about how to jump higher is one, but we've had a few, and I want to start putting more things out there and really make sure that we give as much information to people that can be a part of what we're doing at APEC, and those of you out there that are trying to make a difference in people's lives. And we want to empower you with as much information we have, at least what we've got at this moment in time, hoping to always improve it and change it. Otherwise, man, have a great Thursday. Be blessed out there, everybody, all my wolves, all my people. Be the best you.